It's called Bombe Theorem for Alan Turing. I was conceived of two languages I didn't understand. Every word that ever trespassed my ears sounded foreign. The women shrugging their rivers at my parents' tea and apologies, every bit as strange as this blanket of flesh being wove around me. My parents smuggled me to Manchester in my mother's womb. I could almost understand every fourth word my father spoke to my mother's abdomen. Snow, stepmother, mirror, dwarf, apple, swallow, poison, coffin, prince, kiss, happy, end. I grew fluent in codes before I ever learned to speak. I was raised on calculations and theorems instead of affection. Fairy tales before dreams were the only kiss goodnight. Theorem India apple wild, India Manchester bomb. Theorem India apple lethal. My heart is a complex knot of figures I could not decipher. I rode through 60 miles of countryside, barricaded with coal to get my education. 3 hours with only brain, bicycle, and landscape to keep me company, considering theorems to determine the number of grass blades in any given field, legs grown thick with the accent of desire. Christopher, before you, there were only numbers and theorems. I never knew language until you smiled at me. The religious text of the body had always been written in a code I couldn't crack. Human beings are born with 32 teeth, but only one tongue. As we grow older, our teeth fall out one by one, but the tongue remains the same. Theorem India apple wild, India Manchester bomb. Theorem India apple lethal. Christopher, when you smiled at me, my teeth fell out. When you spoke my name, my tongue swelled with blood. You disappeared before I could tell you how your touch helped me decipher the complicated grammar of love. The second day of your absence, I waited with tooth-printed tongue. Bovine tuberculosis splotches lesions across the body. It spread only to mammals by the sharing of respiratory fluid. I have kissed you so many times during dreams. I must be a cow. I must be the cow that killed you. All this unspoken poison caught in the apple of my throat has choked me. I could not swallow without your kiss. For years, I was a stasis of paralyzed words with no print to pull me from this glass coffin. India wild 19 bomb theorem paper. When the war found me, I was a stutter of language no one understood. The perfect candidate to decipher the garbled speech of battle that surrounded me. I spun the German Enigma code out of my DNA, called that understanding. Like everything I ever loved, it crumbled to dust at my touch. In 1952, the bomb I built to destroy languages was in the hands of every ally. And for the second time in my life, someone, Christopher, actually smiled at me. Christopher, I only smiled back because he reminded me of you. He was 19, less than half the sum of my years. He stole my furniture and the physics book that used to be yours, everything of you gone in his arms. When I reported the theft to the police, he told them of the trespass of my lips, how we pressed the accents of our desire against each other in the dark, all the little secrets of my body that I'd never spoken aloud, and the country I went to war for was so threatened by my sex, they took it from me. Oscar Wilde, bitter genius queen of British literature, famed almost as much for his sex as his wit, imprisoned by history for his equal love and men and art. They named a law of destruction after him. No matter how important the voice to history, if the tongue pronounces love to its own gender, they may choose between a life in prison as a man or a body imprisoned with chemicals instead of gender. Christopher, I chose the chemicals. Theorem India apple wild, India Manchester bomb. Theorem India apple lethal, India wild 19 bomb theorem paper. You wouldn't recognize the code of my body now. The stuttering growth of my breasts, this thin excuse for hair, the chemical's desperate desire to legitimize my love. I stepmothered some arsenic into an apple, rather than wait for the chemicals to eat away what little of me remained. The first bite of my patriotism was for my mother. Let her think me accident or murder, never the weakness of my flesh, never the fractured grammar of my mind. The swallow was for me. There is a war in my body that I am losing. I will not be taken prisoner.